My intent, just so you know, is to put this entire interview up online. It might take me a day or two, just unedited, just because it's a rare opportunity. But as you mentioned, we've asked for an interview many times. How come today is the day?
Well, I didn't go into detail about that part. For me, it has been a whirlwind for 2 years, right? I'm coming from out of state into a relatively large agency. I think on day 2, the wolf restoration plan was adopted by the commission, and then shortly thereafter, we went to work to start to implement that project. Meanwhile, you're trying to get to know the staff in the agency, kind of the processes and operations of the agency, key stakeholders, those types of relationships with the public that we serve. And meanwhile, we're implementing the wolf restoration piece. So it is really like flown by, sometimes painfully. So, and today I think it became clear, right, that the media, like I hold the media in high value of being that free and fair piece of telling the whole story. And I feel like the inaccessibility in those first 2 years really has resulted in making your job harder, right, to find out what's going on from the agency's perspective as well as the producers and advocates. And so it's a real opportunity, I think, and this isn't going to be the last time, Aaron, for us. I know I asked Kelly and her team to work with my executive assistant to start to create regular blocks so that we can have more access and provide more access to the media. So the whole story could be part of that and for the public's knowledge.
Yeah. How many wolves, minimum count, do you think Colorado has right now? I know it's a bit of a guess.
Boy, I probably should have prepped for that particular question. I know for me, it's even difficult, right? We relocated 25. We've lost a few in that first year. We've lost some in this second year. We have 4 packs that have bred successfully. We only have confirmation of pups into the pup counts in 2 of those packs. And of course, those are like remote cameras or drone footage, things like that, where you don't always, because they're wild animals, you don't always know. So we have known 9 pups this year, and then of course we have the 2 other packs that we continue to try to confirm the number of pups in there. Overall, with the pluses and minuses, I couldn't tell you like, oh, it's 34 or something like that. So yeah, I don't.
Yeah, that's fair.
The math is hard when it's day to day.
Yeah. What percentage of your job relates to wolves currently?
Yeah, I think when I answer that, there's my job, and I think that percentage would be, if I'm just guesstimating here, probably 15% at this point, which is not unexpected from a program that's really early in its stages. I'd also say we have a whole team of people inside CPW, as you know, and we all play critical roles in how this program moves forward, with our field staff probably having a much higher percentage where we have wolves of time that they dedicate to the responsiveness, and then our regional management, and then some of our headquarters biologists and regional biologist capacity, like all working together to try to make this thing happen.
Yeah, thought you answered it, but I was going to ask what percentage should it be, but it sounds like you feel like it's at an okay level.
I think it's at an okay level, and I think as we go through this and things start to normalize a little more, then that percentage should go down.
Just from watching the last commission meeting, I'm just hearing you, and what I heard was that you don't really want to be having disputes about what killed what and what someone is owed. Is that a fair understanding of what you were trying to express?
Yeah, I would say it this way, Aaron. The painful part as a public servant is you have very vocal people on either end of an issue with different values, needs, and expectations. A whole lot of people in the middle that want I've said this publicly, right? Like when you talk to someone in Safeway and they know what you do, they say, hey, how are the wolves? And then are you taking care of the ranchers, right? And so what I would say is we're absolutely about what the law says. Sustainable population of wolves, a big capital, and resolving conflicts with the livestock industry, right? And so those compensations, if they're due those compensations, of course we got to follow the law and the regulations as part of that, then we're paying them. And I would encourage any producer to submit the claims that they have, and we'll go through those in a fair way. And part of those opportunities for settlement, and we've had multiple settlements in those, it's just kind of working through, are you okay with this? Are you okay with this? This is what our regs allow. This isn't. So yeah, if we're doing our jobs, we're paying those, paying ranchers for their losses.
Do you think there should be a limit or constraint on indirect loss payments?
I think the science around the indirect piece, we're working through that with the livestock data work group that we pulled together, looking at the science. I do feel like right now it's important that the biology part of it is easy. The social evolution part is the most difficult, right? And that's I think where you give some deference to make sure that producers are not being driven off the landscape by this additional pressure from the restoration, but also we have to be accountable to the public too, so that we're not just paying out claims that aren't consistent with the regulations and the plan that we have.
Yeah, I guess that was a budget-minded question of if it's been 600 some thousand from the first year, what's sustainable? You're not advocating for changes, I guess, is...
I wouldn't advocate for changes. I would say, like, our programs are much stronger now. And so I couldn't project what I think will play out. A hypothesis is we may have more numbers of claims as the wolf population grows and expands across the state. I suspect when we have those strong non-lethal programs, that avoidance and minimization is going to be a lot better than it has been in the early phases of the restoration. And so my hope would be, plus we have a definition of chronic depredation, and when we do see chronically depredating individuals, right, we have a tool now to use through lethal removal, strategic lethal removal, so that we should see the size of those claims, each claim, I would project would come down.
Sure. I want to focus for a second on the Coberly Creek claim situation, which I'm sure you're aware there was a recording with one of your investigators who expressed that they felt pressure to call things inconclusive when they believed it was a wolf. Why would one of your employees feel pressure not to label something a wolf kill?
Yeah, I don't know. We're taking that very seriously and looking into that. That particular employee, everything I've heard, like, she does a great job for us, right? And so we're digging into that, like, where might that be coming from? I'll also say there's a lot of pressure on the agency. There's a lot of perspectives about what's right, a lot of interpretations about what's right and what's wrong. And I think it's really important for all of us, internally and externally, to let our experts use the science and the evidence to make the best calls they can without internal and external pressure.
Are you putting pressure on people not to label things?
Not at all. I know there's a lot of speculation about, is it coming from the governor? Is it coming from Executive Director Gibbs or myself? And that is just not factual.
So in the CBW response to that ranch, the report said investigators determined that it was improbable that a wolf killed the calf. And then on the recording, the investigator said, they all know I think it's a wolf. So how did those two things, are obviously in conflict, how did that happen, I guess?
I think there's one thing to be said is that, especially in these early phases, as people get more and more expertise in these investigations, and I'd say more confidence. Now, I don't want to like project that we've been doing lion and bear investigations for a really long time, so we have very qualified people in the field, and they all check in with one another about, hey, am I seeing this right? Especially now on the wolf pieces, lots of communication, coordination, review of folks' work. So I don't know specifically, Aaron, like what happened in this particular situation. I'm not involved at that level of those conversations, but I could see how going back and forth and one person sees this and they were on the ground, another person has this different type of experience, how we might find ourselves in a situation like that.
I just want to read one more from the response that, and I apologize, I know this is brutal to hear me read, but a necropsy was performed which revealed no signs of significant pre-mortem trauma indicative of any type of depredation, let alone wolf depredation. And then on the recording, the investigator was very definitive. We believe it was killed. So sort of same question, but how does the ranch get told, we don't at all think that any animal killed your cow, but
yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I'm not that close to that, to the ground, right? So I don't know the specifics that you're referring to.
I'm trying to think of a question. The public story sort of suggests that once CPW became aware of this recording, just the whole kind of discussion changed, and it was like, okay, let's settle it. Can you give me insight into what happened regarding that before the last commission meeting?
Yeah, I know that there's a perception that we settled because we were concerned about the recording coming out or being played at the commission meeting. False. We were aware of that recording prior to the commission meeting. It definitely presented new circumstances into our consideration, and we feel like we fairly settled the two claims as part of that in a reasonable way with the claimant.
I forget the word you just said, new circumstances, or how did it affect the claim?
Well, I think it's a piece of information where we were hearing that the staff maybe had differences of opinion, and we saw an opportunity to work with the claimant to, again, resolve both claims in a reasonable way.
Do you think that other depredations that have been labeled inconclusive should be reviewed? I know that's something some ranchers are asking for.
No, I think, admittedly, that's some of the external pressure I hear too, right? It's, we want this to be a wolf claim, or we think it's a wolf claim, and the evidence, this is not like black and white stuff we're talking about, right? There's particular clear evidence that, like rake marks, for example, that show hematoma under the skin, as an example, that show and give relatively clear evidence that that animal was brought down, tooth measurements, everything, that it was likely a wolf. It's not always that way, and so I think what I'm trying to say is it's not you go out there and it's a wolf or it's not a wolf, and there's some cases like the most recent depredation in Copper Creek, right, where the animal was deceased from wounds created earlier, right? And so even in that case, it's not like we had wolf tracks all around because the animal moved on. And I don't know if I'm clearly answering your question, but it's not always black and white. Sometimes it's very apparent that a wolf did it, and sometimes you can have a depredation by another animal that pulled it down, and then wolves come in to scavenge on the carcass too.
You're not asking, I guess, I wasn't trying to ask a yes or no question, but for people that wanted that question asked, will you seek a third-party review or any review of inconclusive depredations?
That is not part of our plan moving forward. Okay. I do know that we have veterinarians that sometimes come out. We saw that in the last investigation and observe.
That just popped in my head. The idea of investigators having body cameras for themselves to review, but also a more public record, is that something I don't believe that's standard. I don't know if that's something you've looked into or thought about.
Yeah, it's Not standard, but not, I mean, we're open to a lot of things about how do we do this better? How do we be more accountable? Like there's the accountability you're talking to the producers. There's also an accountability we should be talking about to the wolf advocates and the general public as well. So tools like that, I think, are worth investigating a lot as we outfit our officers right now with body cams. A lot goes into that. So it's not, I think, something that you can, it's not an on-off switch. It's how do we do that? How do we get the training and deploy that technology?
Yeah. Can we switch to the Copper Creek pack? I figured that would take the biggest brunt of the time. What's the end game, the goal? What's the hope with this pack?
Yeah, I think the hope is that through our non-lethals, human presence, that we can get consistently depredating animals removed. And I know a lot of people say, oh, the pack is chronically depredating. I've heard that forever. The truth of the matter is wolves are individuals and they play a particular role in the social structure. And so we can see the patterns of travel on individuals and know that there's several that are not involved in interacting with livestock. And that ultimately, it's, you ask the goal, it's kind of like, how can we have that pack stay intact and not have regular interactions with livestock, right? And on the other side of that, we're avoiding and minimizing those impacts with the livestock, both from a direct depredation, but also the indirect impacts. I think we're doing that right now, right? We've done a lethal removal of an animal that we suspected had been involved in multiple events, and we'll continue. That was my commitment in re-releasing, is that we have a definition of chronic depredation. We have much stronger non-lethal programs, and that if and when this pack got into that behavior again, that we would surgically remove individuals we believe were creating the conflicts.
What's, as we sit here today, the last update we got was from a letter to Holy Cross Cattlemen's Association, I think from Saturday. What's been going on since?
So, inbox is filling up a lot from other people that are concerned about an operation to remove another animal. I think there's a lot of questions that folks are asking about what's leading to an additional operation for a removal. So we'll be fielding those on the other side of this. But again, ultimately our goal is to remove another individual, not the pack, but an individual. And that's standard practice in the western states for wolf livestock conflict management. You don't really go in and remove a whole pack. The removals are intended to alter the pack's behavior away from interacting with livestock
So
on a
the goal
regular
right now
basis.
is you're seeking one specific wolf. How do you know which one?
We don't, it's, again, wild animals. We don't always know exactly. In this particular case, again, part of re-releasing the pack out, giving them a second chance in different circumstances. All of the individuals are collared in that pack, minus the pups that we have, the new pups from this year. So we can track now. It's not anything that we'll be able to do into the future, but now, because all of that original pack has radio collars on it, we can determine kind of what activity, where were the locations of the animals in comparison to the livestock, and then listen to the range rider, what they're observing out there, as well as the producers, what they're seeing on the ground, along with our officers.
And as we sit here, that operation still seeking this specific wolf?
That's my understanding. I have not engaged with the region today.
Got it. Gonna go back in time a little bit.
Great.
As you know, I don't know if there's a biological term, please correct me, but the original father of this pack was from something called the Wanaha Pack in Oregon, which had killed livestock in September and October of 2023. It's about 8 weeks before you guys captured him, and brought him to Colorado. Do you think that was a mistake initially?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Again, I think people have a tendency to think about if there's a depredation, the whole pack is involved in that. And I'll tell you, like right now, just this time of year, individuals are traveling all around their particular territory with the pursuit of trying to bring food back to the pups. And so not being from Oregon Fish and Wildlife and knowing the data and the history of the particular individuals in that pack, it's hard for me to answer and say, yeah, that was a mistake, or no, it wasn't. I will also say there's a big difference that I think the people are confusing around the claim of, you said you weren't going to bring in chronically depredating animals. And I'm saying that specifically because most wolves, in where they overlap significantly with livestock, will have an occasional depredation. And that's very different than a chronic situation where they demonstrate a preference towards livestock over deer and elk, as an example. So it's hard for me to answer, Aaron, your specific question with a yes, no, because it's more complicated than that.
And you may very well have different information. Oregon may have very more private information, but their depredation reports didn't identify wolves. It just said the pack.
Right. So you could say the BC male in Copper Creek pack is also a chronic depredator, and I would say he is showing a propensity to be in areas where we have elk. But I also can't say that he doesn't run around with other individuals in the pack and they have interactions with livestock too. That I'm not probably doing a very good job describing the social structure and the biology of a pack, but just because you have one or two animals that might focus in on livestock doesn't mean that all of those particular individuals have that same situation. And in my experience, in some cases, very small cases, you do find that you have multiple individuals or all of the individuals involved in that. That has not been my observations here in Colorado.
Got it. So that was about kind of fall 23, fast forward to sort of summer last year. This letter gets brought up a lot, but it was a denial to Middle Park stock growers for lethal removal, signed by Travis Black, which, I don't know how else to say it, it blamed the producer. It said because these non-lethal measures could have prevented some, if not all, of his depredations, essentially he's to blame. Is that regrettable? Was it true?
Giving the benefit of the doubt, you've heard me describe that Middle Park situation as a perfect storm. Well, I think we would all probably take a step back and say, could we have been more proactive sooner rather than later? My answer would be yes. Were all of the non-lethals effectively deployed the way we would want to see them? Did we have time to train people that were deploying some of those non-lethals? No. But I'd also say in that, the denials of chronic depredation permits, for me, it's really crystal clear. And we put a lot of other information in that original letter, but our regulations say if CPW or the service or our agents have the resources that will conduct the lethal removals. Also part of conversation since I've been here, rightfully so, the producers don't want to have to remove individuals, right? The wolf advocates were very clear that they trust CPW to do those lethal removals, and the commission then adopted the regulations that say, hey, if we have the resources, then we're going to do those. And that should have really, at the end of the day, that's the foundation of the denial, more than what did or didn't happen.
Well, I think those requests come as like, hey, are you going to do this or not? And if not, then let us. I think.
Right.
And you guys didn't.
So also going back in time, did not have a definition of chronic depredation. We do now. We already did a lethal removal. We're attempting one more in that situation. So I feel like we're back on track with the plan. We got the infrastructure in place, and we're following through on the plan and the regulations.
This is something you said in January. Sorry, my mind just went blank for a second.
No worries.
In January, we had a news conference about the release, including the release of the Coberly Creek Pack again, and you were describing like the heat you took for capturing them to begin with, and the pressure and desire for them to succeed. How much did public pressure affect how this pack has been managed over the last year plus?
So we take a lot of public pressure. We're a public entity, so that happens whether it's wolves or a firing range or a forest health treatment on a state park, right? We're accustomed to public pressure. In the case of Middle Park situation, we saw an opportunity to rectify the situation that was playing out on those ranches. And at the same time, that was the first successful breeding pair from our original relocation efforts. So for me, the law says create a sustainable population of wolves. We knew we were going to have the chronic depredation piece. We were already working on strengthening the range rider program, making sure that we had adequate stockpiles of other non-lethal techniques that are more effective earlier in the season, whereas range riders are more effective later. And so that was really important to us to do resolve the issues or conflicts with the producers, but also deliver on that foundational population that's necessary to get on the sustainable. Lots of pressure coming in now, as you've been reporting on it, right? The producers are upset, wolf advocates are upset, and we navigate that pressure all the time. I've also been very public about the agency has a managing in the public trust responsibility, right? And that means greatest number of benefits to greatest number of beneficiaries. And those are current and future, right? So those are the Coloradans that aren't even here yet, including ranchers, right? And that's super important to us, that the pressure can come, but we have to use science and that public trust management responsibility to make the decisions to go forward.
Do you believe you followed the plan in managing this pack?
I believe, as I said in the legislative hearing, people want to say violate. I deviated from the plan. The plan has kind of bounds around or acknowledgement that we don't know everything at the time of the development of the plan, and that we need to be adaptable. And I was adaptable in that situation. Also said after that operation that we would not do that again, and I don't believe we're going to need to ever, because we have 4 packs producing new pups. Like, we're off to a relatively good start.
Deviation, not violation, I guess is your...
Yeah, I would say deviation. I was engaged with the AG's office, making sure that I wasn't doing something unlawful in that decision. And the advice I received is that the plan is not legally binding. It's a plan.
At the Capitol, you mentioned debating that decision with yourself kind of regularly. How do you, as we sit here today, they had depredations as soon as March of this year. How do you feel about the recapture, the re-release, and subsequent lethal removals?
Yeah, I think there's tough days. I'm living them right now, right? Some of the advocates, maybe many of the advocates, are very angry right now, questioning with everything that's played out whether CPW is committed to implementing the law and move towards that sustainable population. We have a lot of folks in the livestock industry that are pretty upset and think we did this intentionally, that we dumped them on them. And at the end of the day, we've removed one of the pack. We, again, don't know, haven't confirmed the number of pups in the pack, but essentially, when we get the conflict under control, we'll still have animals out there on the ground that are contributing to the population and the goal of a sustainable population.
Sorry, I think I have about 2 more minutes left.
Sure. This is a quick question, just from my own understanding. How does the chronic depredation definition work? Is it the clock resets every 30 days, or you're labeled chronically depredating and that sticks with you?
Yeah, so it's the way it's designed is it's 3 depredation events, like at least one of those has to be clear and convincing, so very, very certain it was wolves. 2 can be preponderance of evidence, so more evidence that it was or versus it wasn't. That's a backstop, right? And so that was designed to say if we get 3 and 30, then we motivate. Like we design and implement an operation for lethal removal. Again, we do those one at a time. The lethal removals are designed to try to alter the pack's behavior towards livestock.
This came up from the advocate side of like, okay, well, there was one in July, but
yeah.
so that's fine.
So the 10J, so there's our definition in the administrative directive for chronic of 3 and 30. Again, that's a hard backstop. If we hit that, we don't debate it, we do a lethal removal, or we attempt to. The 10J says a depredating wolf is a wolf that has one depredation in a 30-day window. So there is something to the 30-day window, but I think what's missing is you do a lethal removal to alter the pack's behavior. If there's a depredation or you haven't altered that pack's behavior in 30 days from the removal of that original animal, then you're still in the process of trying to alter the pack's behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 2309, where are we at with the investigation into its death?
2309
original
is the middle
male.
part. All mortalities of these animals are investigated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That case, as far as I understand, the investigation is still ongoing.
They've been, the necropsy's never been public. Fish and Wildlife has said that a gunshot led to its death. Do you know how it died? Did CPW euthanize it?
We did not euthanize it. In fact, we captured it. It was clear something was wrong with it. We gave heavy doses of antibiotics when we released it back into the holding facility with the female at the time. And I don't know, I can't remember exactly, Aaron, like what period of time happened, but shortly thereafter that we received a mortality signal on the collar and then went and found it deceased.
Sure.
All right, I do apologize.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.